Hello, this is Connor Stoops and welcome back to another Lumion Legacy HTUC video, and today's video is on Clionae. Clionae on first look looks to be a very meta-defining Lumion in today's metagame, so why not talk about it? In today's video, we're going to be talking about how to use and counter Clionae, from the sets, the counters and checks and teammates, as well as your weaknesses, resistances, and the role that Clionae will be playing on all teams. This is Connor Stoops, and this is how to use and counter Clionae. So the role that Clionae will be playing is an essential question to ask, and we can answer this question with its base stats. Its base stats, apart from the melee attack, melee defense, and speed, look pretty okay. Its melee attack stat, which is 14, obviously don't use that, and its melee defense stat of 66, this is on par with Lumens like Vanillin, so that's gonna give you an idea of how bad its melee defense stat is. And your speed stat of 70, while this isn't the worst thing in the world, you do get outsped by most offensive Lumions in this metagame, but you can outspeed most walls such as Sudamor's Gargolem defense and Obsidian if you do wish so. Of course, your energy stat is pretty great. While it isn't on par with the roamers, this does let you throw out a lot of moves before needing to wait or rest. And your range attack stat of 95, this is okay on defensive Lumions, but compared to most of the damage output in this metagame, this range attack stat is nothing to be worried about if you're up against Clionae. But the main thing you should be worried about is its range defense stat of 127 and its HP stat of 97. With these two defenses, Clionae can take a bunch of hits on the range side. This is even more compounded by the fact that it has 7 resistances, which is to fire, water, ice, metal, light, brawler, and mind. These are all really common types. I mean, water types I don't really need to explain much. There's a bunch of water types that are going to be in this metagame. And even existing water types such as Barblast, Luminami, Garlash, those water types are also going to be able to resisted by, or you're going to be able to resist them, which is always nice. Fire types, they are pretty common. It's mainly Pyrelin and Ikazune you can be swapping in on. Ice types, they're also not as common, but they're pretty common, with Wintrix being the most namely ice type to be worried about. Metal, it's pretty common in this metagame. You have Stratosaur and Valkyrie, which are really common metal types you can swap in on. Light types, mainly Luminami, Valkyrie, and Shachi, you can try your hand at swapping in on. And Brawler and Mind, they're respectively pretty common in this metagame with representatives such as Ursul, Shachi, Cosmere, Kraken, Unleashed, Ferroglyph, all of the above. And you do have 6 with weaknesses though, those being the Dark Spirit, Bug, Ancient, Plant, Electric, and Toxic. Toxic types aren't as common, but you do have to watch out for stuff like Barblast that can hit you super effectively. Dark types, Vesperatu, and mainly only really Vesperatu as the only dark type you need to be worried about, and dark type moves such as Slapdown have to be worried about that as well. Spirit types, it's mainly only really going to be Harvesect, or not really Harvesect, but Revenine, Krakaloa, Soul Burst, mainly stuff like that you have to be worried about. Bug types, only really Deludrix is common. Plant types, Totab is pretty much the only Lumion that's going to be running Plants tab other than like Colossotrops, but that's not really that common as well. And of course, electric type weakness, you have Ikazune, Iliguana, Zulong, and even more electric types that you have to be worried about. So overall, its role does seem to be a pretty good range defense tank. However, the utility that we'll be talking about later will increase Clionae's viability by a lot. It's pretty good in the range defense side, but overall, this is only really meant to be used as a range tank because your melee defense is not really the best to be trying to use. So with that out of the way, let's talk about Clionae's set. So Clionae is going to be running a support set, and I'll get to the reason of why it's actually support, but for now your ability of choice is going to be Persistence and Repugnant. Repugnant is actually really good on Clionae because this does let you wall stuff like Garlash, but Persistence is going to be your ability of choice because of your moveset that I'll be talking about in a bit, supporting Persistence's like ability even more. Your personality will be very frail, robust, and clever. Barrier Fail is mainly so we don't decrease any stats we want, and we're not using any melee attacking moves. And Robust and Clever, it's to mix out our defenses, and Robust is for a specific investment you want to hit. And for Clever is for making you as range bulky as possible because that is your best stat to invest in. And your moveset is going to be Dissipate, which is really essential on Clionae because this does make up for how hard you're not going to be hitting for most of the match. It's basically a pivot, non-contact pivot move that has negative priority, so it does support offensive Lumions in that way. Stratagem here is mainly for stab, and it is our most hardest hitting stab, so we're not forced to be just sitting there against toxic type Lumions, stuff like that can try and hit you. And Far and Near Enchantment, the reason why I have one or the other is because depending on what you want to support, for example, you want to support Soul Burst Eruptodon, Near Enchant or Far Enchant might be better because you are up against most ranged tanks with Eruptodon, so just choose the enchant that you're going to be wanting to support your wall breaker with, so Clionae will be able to support them effectively. And of course, Rejuvenate here is so we can actually heal all of our damage off that we've been taking over time. And for the TPs, I forgot to mention the item though, but this item will be used with the Energy Orb, so we can throw out as much moves as possible. And for our melee defense with the HP, this will let us live a 3-hit KO from a slap down Gargolem attack, which means we're going to be walling that pretty effectively. And of course, it also does actually let you live a +2 Clay Slap Very Brawny Barbadger, so that is also very nice. And your range defense stat is obviously just to max that out as much as possible. 8 speed TPs is actually pretty good here because this does let you outspeed sluggish Stratosaurs, I'm pretty sure, so that's pretty nice. And your energy stat of 4, this is mainly leftovers, and because there's really no optimal way to actually optimize your energy stat, 4 is pretty much fine for Clionae. So with that out of the way, let's talk about the counters and checks, and of course the teammates you want to be running with Clionae. So in terms of offensive counters and checks, there's really no Lumions that do it better than Provoke Lumions. Provoke Lumions shut down 3 out of 4 of Clionae's most likely moveset. You can stop it from healing, pivoting out of the battlefield, and of course setting up those enchantments, so Provoke is really great against Clionae. And other than that, you can use other Lumions that can hit it super effectively. The new Roamer can hit it super effectively. Nevermare actually walls this thing to the ground, so use Nevermare if you want to have something that hard walls Clionae offensively. And of course, you have Vesperatu here as a standard spirit type to be swapping in most of the time. If Clionae isn't running Water Stab, then the electric types shown here are of course going to be able to stop it very effectively. And of course, your offensive defensive teammates for this one, there's really not a lot of defensive counters I can say for Clionae because most of them, they just get pivot on. So teammates, we're getting to that section. And mainly, you want to run Clionae with a bunch of offensive Lumions that can take advantage of enchantments. Enchantments are basically halving the amount of damage taken by a specific type. Specifically, Near Enchantments half the damage of melee attacking moves, and Far Enchantments half the damage of range attacking moves. So Soul Burst, Eruptodon, Shachi, Totab, Zulong, Garbantis, Meditoad, they're all Lumions that can hit hard and fit on more offensive teams to take advantage of Far or Near Enchantments. Garbantis is particularly a Lumion I want to mention, mainly because it does support Clionae defensively and offensively. Not only does it also support or benefits from the Near and Far enchantments, but it also does help supporting the dark type matchups on your team, so you can use Garbantis for that exact role. Shachi and Eruptodon, they're hard hitting Lumions that are pretty fast and kind of need the support of getting into the battle. Totab, Zulong, they're your standard cleaners or sweepers. And as for Meditoad, it's pretty good because it does help Clionae against electric types, which is always nice. And of course, defensive stuff, The new Lumion actually does pretty well in walling most of the stuff that Clionae wants to get by, so this is pretty good. And of course, you can use standard fire types such as Soul Burst Krakaloa and regular Pyrolin. Gargolem Defense and Garbantis here. They're also here for the same reasons that Garbantis is here, or similar reasons, because Gargolem Defense doesn't want to be taking slapdowns. And Swelder is also right here with Garbantis in terms of Garbantis' role on the team. So overall, Clionae looks to be very meta defining, and that is because of near and far enchantments. What's mainly good about these enchantments is that it supports non-bulky Lumions such as Shachi and Eruptodon. What's especially great by this is if the opponent team builds correctly. Let's bring up my example again of far enchantments with Soul Burst Eruptodon. Eruptodon's main problem is that it kind of gets stopped by Lumions that can hit it on its range defense side, and mainly just range tanks as a whole. So when you put far enchantments on the field, Eruptodon is going to be taking half of that damage, and it's going to be dealing more damage because it's going to be staying in a lot more. And Eruptodon has actual bulk, so it can take advantage of those enchantments very well. And just not to give a Soul Burst example, you also have other Lumens such as Shachi. Shachi already kind of fears the fact that it's pretty frail, but now with enchantments, Shachi is not going to be fearing enchantments as much. Clionae is very obviously a very, very good Lumion and probably a staple on a lot of offensive teams. If you want to use offensive Lumions such as the Soul Bursts, Shachi, Tatab, Zulong, all above, then Clionae is going to be the obvious support Lumion for your team. But that's just my thoughts on it. What are your thoughts on the video? And let me know if you've learned anything or found something informational, or by liking and subscribing to the video. Of course, if you want to support the channel, join the Discord, and of course remember that Zulong is still a dumpster fire.